An authoritarian woman, whose name is Karen, invaded my property with a strange demand. She wanted me to allow her apparently spoiled son to swim in my private pool. This happened even after I had made it clear multiple times that they needed to leave my property. This lady simply wouldn't accept no for an answer. I'll share what happened to provide better context and add an emotional touch. I live right next to a lake, which is a real blessing because during the summer, I can just take a walk in my own backyard and reach the beach. I'm a swimming enthusiast, but in late autumn and early spring, the water can be too chilly for my liking. Sometimes, I see people heading to the lake on hot days, thinking the water will be pleasantly cool, only to jump in and realize that the lake is still incredibly cold. So, while the lake was still freezing, I decided to get a small heated pool for my backyard. I had owned this pool for about 2 years before this incident occurred. On that spring morning, the pool water was wonderfully warm after a refreshing swim. However, I had to interrupt my relaxation for an important phone call. It was my brother, who needed me to find some information on my computer. I got distracted for about 30 minutes before finally going back outside. That's when I encountered authoritarian Karen and her spoiled son. Karen had comfortably settled in my garden chair, while my hat and sunscreen, which had occupied the chair previously, were now conveniently on the ground. Her spoiled son was already swimming in my pool. I was somewhat confused about why they were on my property, so I politely asked, "Excuse me, but what are you doing on my property?" Authoritarian Karen looked up and said, "Oh, is this your property?" I was stunned by her complete lack of awareness and replied calmly, "Yes, this is my property." "May I know the reason for your presence here?" Karen then looked at me and took on a condescending tone, as if explaining something to a child, and said, "Well, you see, my son wanted to swim, but the lake was a bit cold, you know." I usually have plenty of patience, but after hearing her talk to me as if I were a child, my patience ran thin. I firmly responded, "I understand the lake may be cold, but that doesn't justify invading my property and using my pool." Karen didn't like my response and retorted, "You don't have to be so harsh. I'm just trying to bring happiness to my son. Besides, making him get out of the pool could lead to hypothermia. Do you want that for my son?" At this point, the spoiled son continued to stay in the pool, clearly oblivious to our conversation. I said sincerely, "I apologize, but I don't allow strangers to use my facilities." Then, I turned to the boy and added, "My friend, you need to get out of the pool." Perhaps I chose the wrong approach, because immediately after that, authoritarian Karen stood up and began raising her voice. She said, "How dare you talk to my son like that? He has feelings too and deserves to be in this pool. Moreover, taking him out of the water could cause hypothermia. Do you want that for my son?" At that moment, I had no idea what I had said to trigger the anger of authoritarian Karen. So, I turned calmly but determinedly and stated, "No matter how cold the lake water is. On a hot day like this, after swimming in this pool, he shouldn't feel cold at all. Moreover, he has no right to be here. This is my property, and both of you need to leave before I call the police." To be honest, I never imagined an argument could unfold so quickly. And now, here I am, in a situation I can hardly believe. Karen wasted no time and exclaimed, "Go ahead, call the police. I'll tell. When you threatened my son and spoke disrespectfully to me, I looked authoritarian Karen in the eyes and prepared to respond, but before I could say anything, she raised her hand as if she wanted to silence me before turning to her son with a gentle tone and said, "It's okay, this man simply wasn't raised to be a kind or sharing person. I'll teach you better values." I was completely stunned. She not only silenced me but also told her son that I was inconsiderate. So, I retorted, "Well, if I was raised improperly, then you certainly weren't raised at all. Your attitude is typical of a spoiled child. Now, please, remove yourself from my property with your son and his childish behavior." I had never before come up with such a fitting insult on the spot, but honestly, I felt satisfied. This time, it was her turn to be stunned. She didn't utter a word, just pulled her son out of the pool, gathered her things from my chair, kicked it, and left my garden with her son in tow, uttering offensive words and showing me the middle finger. Throughout it all, I kept a small smile on my face, but in reality, I was furious. Everything happened so quickly and ended even faster. Since then, I haven't seen her or her spoiled son again. However, I'd been concerned about the possibility of something similar happening again, so I installed cameras around the house, just as a precaution. It's unbelievable to think that someone could be so authoritarian as to act as if they had some kind of right to your personal property. Can you imagine the potential consequences if the child had been injured while swimming in your pool? Karen would surely have taken you to court. There was no way I could allow that person to remain on my property and use my pool if I were in your place. And honestly, you did the right thing by threatening to call the police. She invaded your property and tried to impose her will on you. What a terrible mother. And the idea of installing cameras around the house after this incident is brilliant. That would be my top recommendation after reading this story. I hope Karen never returns, and I hope you never have to face such a situation again, because this pool and this property are yours, and you shouldn't yield to the whims of a stranger who thinks she's entitled. Every time I share my engagement with someone, I hear unpleasant and negative comments, and I'm feeling lost on how to deal with this. I am engaged to my partner, and since we got engaged, I've received a lot of opinions saying I'm too young to get married, that we don't know each other well enough, or that we shouldn't rush into marriage. A colleague even went as far as joking about a future divorce. Today, I had yet another example of these negative comments. I went to the nail salon, and my manicurist asked about my engagement ring. When I explained the situation, she expressed her excitement about doing my nails for the wedding. However, an older lady who was nearby decided to chime in and laughed, saying I was too young to get married. I tried to keep a good sense of humor and said, "Thank you for letting me know. At least my eye cream is working." But this interaction drained my joy. Now, I avoid disclosing my engagement because I know people don't show genuine interest, and I don't want to impose my personal life on them. However, if the topic naturally comes up in a conversation, I'm willing to share our plans. It surprises me how people react so bitterly, as I would never dare to do the same if someone told me they were engaged. I don't expect everyone to be thrilled with the news, but I also don't want to be subjected to laughter and negative predictions about the future of my relationship. Deep down, others' opinions don't affect me. The opinions people have about my relationship are completely misguided, as we are deeply in love and committed to each other. However, it's disheartening when people respond with sarcasm and laughter. Furthermore, I believe I shouldn't hide my engagement just to please others. Has this happened to anyone else? How did you respond to people who were rude when hearing about the engagement? What should I do? It's surprising how critical people can be about someone who is preparing to get married. It's toxic to offer opinions based solely on the duration of the relationship. While I personally think the marriage is happening quickly, I see no need to express that. After all, this marriage is not about me and is not my business. Normally, I would expect people to at least say congratulations instead of interfering and making negative predictions about the future. It's strange behavior, isn't it? It's the kind of backhandedly polite comment that someone might receive from someone pretending to care. When someone acts like this, they don't actually care about your life, but are trying to simplify it and fit it into categories that don't apply to your situation. These people probably believe they are being helpful when they are actually being unpleasant. So, if I were in your shoes, I would stop being so accommodating with these people. I wouldn't engage in the banter or respond negatively. I'd probably just say, "Thank you for your opinion," and go on my way, because these people don't determine the future of my marriage. Look, I have no idea how you feel about your fiancé, and while I personally think this marriage is happening a bit fast, it doesn't mean it won't be successful. It seems like you love your fiancé, so don't worry about what others think. If family and friends are behaving this way, maybe they don't even need to be invited. People who make such negative comments, like asking to be informed when you get divorced or saying your marriage won't last, might not be the best choices to invite to the wedding. However, overall, I hope these people stay quiet and mind their own business. You should go ahead with your wedding without letting these opinions affect you because, honestly, what they think doesn't matter, and you should simply ignore them. My boyfriend hung up the call when I mentioned the idea of breaking up, and now I'm quite unsure because I didn't have the chance to end the situation properly. My now ex-boyfriend and I had a heated argument last night. Essentially, we're both extremely busy to the point where we can't really work on our relationship, and it feels like our problems have no clear solutions. I've been reflecting a lot on this and realize that under the current circumstances, it just won't work. Perhaps if we had more time and availability to invest in the relationship, things would be different, but given the current circumstances, it doesn't seem feasible. We've been in a long-distance relationship from the start and have been together for 3 years. Over time, I started feeling increasingly lonely because whenever I wanted to discuss something, I knew we only had an hour to catch up with each other. Additionally, I was aware that work was consuming him completely. He barely had time to sleep and eat. I felt guilty for adding another responsibility to his already overloaded schedule, and he often expressed that I was overwhelming him. Over time, I believe he began to feel trapped in a relationship that was suffocating him, which is understandable. So, he decided to hang up the call when I mentioned the idea of breaking up. Now, I'm filled with doubts about how to proceed. My decision was a mix of feelings of guilt and loneliness. I knew things couldn't continue this way. So, last night, after an argument that seemed never-ending, I told him, "Look, I don't think this is going to work." He immediately hung up and blocked me on various platforms. I truly love this man and care about him, even though I had to end the relationship. I believe he will always be one of the greatest blessings in my life. However, I know that during the argument, I said hurtful things, and we didn't get to end it in a more amicable way. It didn't have to be perfect, but I didn't want us to end with a heated argument and then disappear from each other's lives forever. I haven't had any contact with him yet, and I'm uncertain if it would be a good idea to do so at this moment, in an attempt to have a calm conversation. Considering the old wounds he carries, my only desire is to convey the message that he is a valuable person and deserves much more love. I want to make it clear that I'm not leaving him because I simply stopped loving him. What I really wish for is that we can stop hurting each other and fighting. How can I seek closure if it's something I should do? Should I send him a message or try to talk to him on the phone? What would be the best approach? I understand that you want to express your intentions and feelings positively, but I believe it's important to respect the space he requested by blocking you on various platforms. He has clearly shown that he no longer wishes to maintain contact. While the breakup may have been abrupt, as you mentioned, he may be dealing with it in the best way he can, given his past experiences. Perhaps he has his reasons for blocking you, and trying to communicate again at this time may not be beneficial for both of you. Sometimes, giving space and time is the best way to allow both parties to process their feelings and move on. I don't see the need to seek closure now, especially if he is not open to that conversation. The breakup has already happened, and trying to explain or discuss details may not be productive. It's important to respect his decision to no longer want contact and focus on your own journey of healing and personal growth. It can be challenging to accept this situation, but sometimes closure comes from within as you move forward in your life and build new paths. I sincerely wish you find peace and happiness in your future, regardless of what happens in relation to this situation. I'm facing a complicated situation, and I'm not sure how to handle it, as I'm 23 years old. Throughout my life, I've had the feeling that my parents favored my younger brother, who was about 3 years younger than me, quite a bit. They used to praise him a lot for his looks and seemed to cater to most of his requests, something I never thought I could do, let alone obtain. He appeared to have more financial flexibility. Whenever he asked for money or something similar, most of the time, they would give in and even give him more than he requested. I remember they allowed him to buy an iPad on a Christmas with the money he received as gifts, while they denied me the same opportunity. They even lent him money to buy a car, while they rejected my loan request just a few months before. They gave him an allowance at the same time I received one, even though he was 3 years younger than me. Furthermore, when I received more money, he also received more, despite the age difference and responsibilities. These are just a few examples I had to deal with. Additionally, I made the decision to follow in my father's footsteps and enter the same profession as him. At first, he tried to persuade me to do the same, but when I finally made the decision, he started making things difficult for me. Although he accepted me into his workplace and began assigning tasks while I was still in college to graduate in the field, it took a long time for him to let me work side by side with my brother. My brother, on the other hand, had no interest in pursuing the same profession but was easily allowed to help, even if it was just to earn some extra money. Now, I know what you're thinking. Up to this point, things may still seem fair. However, what really frustrates me is that when I finally started, my working hours were severely limited, and I had to beg my father to increase them, as I had been rejected from another job. He told me he didn't have the resources to give me. Later, I managed to secure another job outside of this field, even though I wanted nothing more than this profession. When my brother asked for an increase in working hours when he had barely been there for a month, his request was approved. All he had to do was ask, unlike me, who had begged for months. When I confronted my father about it, he claimed it was my fault for not asking, despite there being plenty of evidence suggesting I had asked several times, if not begged. My brother, on the other hand, never needed to seek another job until very recently, as he's starting to build his own career. He was very well compensated by my father as they offered him many working hours. I had the opportunity to help as much as he did when I was finally given the chance, but of course, this came a few years late. Due to this situation, my brother ended up earning thousands of dollars more than me. Of course, I could seek employment elsewhere while still staying in the same profession, but my father warned me that other employers would know who he is and assume that I would return to his company. He doesn't want me to distance myself, but even if I do, offering an attractive salary for my services will be unlikely now, especially as I'm about to start a full-time job. I'm confused and find this situation extremely unfair. Whenever I try to discuss this with my parents, they insist that I don't create conflicts over matters I should keep to myself, saying that I will probably make more money than my brother in the future. They even hinted that on several occasions, I have suffered from mental health issues for expressing how unfair this has been for me. I am a very determined person and have worked hard to get to where I am today, and to be honest, it hasn't been easy. I feel like my parents clearly show favoritism towards my brother, or am I just being immature? Sometimes, I have the feeling that they don't care much about my life, especially when compared to my brothers, even though I have set higher standards and achieved more than they did when they were my age. Sometimes, I think they might be envious of what I am capable of accomplishing, academically included. Leaving my father's wing and pursuing my career elsewhere doesn't seem like a viable option, especially considering that I live in a small country where everyone knows each other. My father's argument about the difficulty of getting a job elsewhere is valid, despite the high demand for professionals with my qualifications. I have a strong desire to follow this path, and I am extremely determined to do so. I don't want to abandon this path and start from scratch just because of family issues. Over the years, I have developed deep resentment towards my family due to everything I've been through. I can't understand how they can move on knowing that I am not happy with what they have done to me, as I have tried to express my feelings several times. It seems like they expect me to accept this situation, even though it's of utmost importance to me. I believe they are not proficient in dealing with emotional issues and have very limited emotional intelligence. They have rarely been there for me, and I don't see them as a support system in any way. How should I deal with this situation, and what should I do? I would be immensely grateful for any guidance, as I find myself in a complex situation and haven't felt like myself for some time. This concern has persisted for about 20 years, with every little favoritism granted to my brother in contrast to the rejection I feel from my parents repeatedly. It's like a blade in my heart. Now that I've grown up, I feel like I can't continue this way for much longer. I need to build my own life. How should I proceed? Given that your father is also in the same profession and is seeking to build his reputation, perhaps you have a chance to get more deeply involved in it, especially since it seems that he is currently unwilling to collaborate with you. This appears to be a glaring contradiction and is unfair. However, I believe it's not necessary to act hastily. If possible, maybe you can continue working with your father for now, using this experience to secure a better position down the line. I've been through similar situations, and I know it can be challenging, but in the end, the effort is worth it. So, this is definitely an option to consider. Regardless of the choice you make, it's clear that you are an extremely determined person. I'm confident you will achieve success because you've worked hard to get where you are. Nothing will deter your commitment and dedication to your profession, not even your father, who seems to show favoritism toward your brother. Thank you for watching. If you haven't already, remember to subscribe and hit the notification bell. To check out more stories, use the playlist at the top of the description. And the next time you go live, consider using royalty-free music, like the track Crème de Safra, available on Spotify or other music platforms, to add a special touch to your broadcast. That's it, folks. I hope you've enjoyed these incredible stories. If you haven't subscribed yet, don't miss the chance to become part of our HistoReddit community. Leave a like if you enjoyed this video, and don't forget to activate the notification bell so you won't miss any new content. And if you have stories to share, leave them in the comments. Thanks for watching, and until the next historical adventure.